what we're going to be looking at in this letter is just his beliefs. We're going to highlight them so next time we could be able to look at his actions and figure out, is he consistent with his beliefs and actions, or is he inconsistent? So Jeffersonian Republican Party gained control of the executive and legislative branches of the central government in the national election of 1800. They have been able to convince a majority of Americans that if voters, that the Federalist policies, what Federalist policies would they be so concerned about? What Federalist policies were going on, if continued, would be disastrous results for the new nation? Alien and sedition. If continued, would produce disastrous results for the new nation. This Jeffersonian Republican victory at the polls ended the Federalist virtual monopoly of the political power of the nation. During the 12 years the Federalist leaders directed the affairs of the nation, they worked to strengthen the central government, to establish a sound fiscal system, and to develop strong economic relations with Europe. These were the years of increasing political rivalry that resulted in conflict of the two philosophies of government. The Jeffersonian Republicans, here is why Jefferson's going to have an issue. They ideally emphasize the advantage of local and state government. And now he is in the executive, he is in the federal government, and now he holds this power, but he doesn't believe he should hold that power. He believes that the local and state governments should control it. While the Federalists emphasize a more national approach to the use of political power. The decisions made by Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, regardless of their own desire for change, were influenced by programs launched by the Federalist era. These Republican presidents were quick to realize that their change was based on unforeseen events and circumstances that challenged their political leadership as well as specific political philosophy or party platforms. The Virginia dynasty of presidents, which led the nation from 1800 to 1824, was faced with a series of domestic and foreign crises: the Napoleonic Wars, the War of 1812, the British economic competition, the Panic of 1819, the European intervention in the Western Hemisphere, necessitated a momentous decision by Republican leaders. The decisions resulted in broad changes in American society. Changes occurred in areas of taxation, foreign policy, expansion, internal improvements, war, finance, slavery, manufacturing, voting, and the structure of political parties. In early 1799, as he prepared for the president election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson wrote a summary of his political principles he developed during his 25 years of service to his country. Jefferson included the statements and principles in a letter to Eldridge Gerry, a prominent Massachusetts Republican. To Eldridge Gerry, I do, with sincere zeal, wish an inviolable preservation of our present federal Constitution. Many people feared that what would Jefferson do with the Constitution? Because he favored what type of government? The Articles. He favored the weak government, right? States' rights. So many people feared that he would get rid of it, but now right here, he is assuring him, what is he going to keep? And again, who do you think he's trying to calm? What party do you think he's trying to calm, saying, we're going to keep the Constitution? Federalist. He says, according to the true sense in which it was adopted by the states, that it was advocated by its friends, and not which its enemies apprehend, who therefore became its enemies. I'm not opposed to monarchizing, I'm opposed to monarchizing its features. So how does he not want to look like? He doesn't want to look like what? A king. He doesn't want to be a king. He says, I am for preserving states the powers not yield to them in the Union and to the legislator in its constitutional share. So he says, I'm for preserving states' rights, right? Is that him being pro-states like we know? And giving the legislator constitutional share of its division of powers. Again, those were his two favorites in federalism, the states, and within the checks and balances, the legislator. But he says, yes, I'm for the states, and yes, I'm for the legislator. I am not for transferring all the powers of states to the general government. So does he want to give them all the powers? No, he's still going to stick with the central government. Who is he again trying to calm down, saying, I'm not going to give the states all the powers. Federalist. Okay, he's still trying to calm down the Federalist. I am for government rigorously frugal and simple. What does that mean? Frugal and simple. Well, we know what simple is, but what does frugal mean? Cheap. I always refer to my students when, have you ever asked your parents, let's go out to eat, and they were like, there's food at home? Your parents are being cheap. You're like, yo, they don't want to spend that money, right? Hey, he says, let's be cheap. He says, and we will apply all the possible savings of public revenue to discharge the national debt. So he says, all that extra money, what are we going to do with it? Get rid of the debt. Is he seeing like Hamilton is? No. He says, I am not for the multiplication of officers and salaries merely to make partisan. So does he want a bigger government? No. He says, I am not going to create new jobs and new salaries merely to make my party happy. So when Donald Trump came into office, did he keep the Obama administration people, or did he bring in new people? Did he create new offices? Yes. Did that create a bigger government? Is Jefferson saying he's going to do the same? No. He says, I am not going to create a bigger government because it would make my party happy. He's actually not going to remove a lot of people of the old Federalist jobs. Is that going to make his party happy? No, it's going to make him very upset. And for increasing every device the public debt on the principle that it's a blessing. So does he like the debt? No. I am for relying on internal defense, our militia solely, till actual invasion, and for such a naval force to may protect our coast and harbors. So does he want a big military or a small military? He wants a small military. He says a naval force to protect our coast and harbors from such deprivations we have experienced. I am not for a standing army in time of peace, which may overawe the public sentiment. Not for a navy, which by its own expense and internal wars which will implicate us, will grind us with the public burdens and sink us under them. Okay, does he want a big army? No. Eventually I will see in the reading tonight that he's going to create a small army called Little Jeffs. Okay? Little Jeffs. Okay? I am for free commerce. What does commerce mean? Trade with all nations. Political connection with none. And little or no diplomatic establishment. I am not for linking ourselves by treaties with the quarrels of Europe. Gosh, what treaty is this guy still salty about? The Franco-American alliance, right? He says, entering that field of slaughter to preserve their balance, or joining in the confederacy of kings to war against the principles of liberty. I am for freedom of religion, for freedom of the press, and against all violations of the Constitution, to silence by force and not by reason the complaints or criticisms. Okay, he's really jaded about something. What is he jaded about right here? The Alien and Sedition Act, right? Because did it silence him? Yes, but did he secretly go out against it? Just dush of our citizens against the conduct of other agents. I am for encouraging, he wants to encourage the progress of science and all its branches. I am not for raising a hue and a cry against the sacred name of philosophy, for the awing of the human mind by stories of the raw head of the bloody bones to distress of its own, the vision and the repose implicity on that of others, to go backwards instead of forwards, to look for improvement, to believe the government, religion, and morality on every other science with the highest perfection in the ages of the dark ignorance, and that nothing can ever be devised more perfectly than that was established by our forefathers. To these I will add, I was a sincere well-wisher to the success of the French Revolution. Again, who is he pro? Pro-France. And still wish it may end in the establishment of a free and well-ordered republic. But I have not been insensible under the atrocities and deprivations they committed on our commerce. The first object of my heart is my own country. So he's pro who first? America. In that I embarked my family, my fortune, and my own existence. I may have not one farthing of interest, nor one fiber of attachment out of it, nor a single motive of preference of any one nation to another, but its proportion as they are more or less friendly to us. But though deeply feeling the injuries of France, I did not think the war the surest means of redressing them. I did believe the mission sincerely was to dispose and preserve peace, will obtain us a peaceful and honorable settlement and retribution. These, my friends, are my principles. They are unquestionably the principles of the great body of fellow citizens, and I know there is not one of them which is not also yours. Okay, again, who do you think he's trying to calm down? The Federalists, because they really fear, what is he gonna do? This guy who states rights, who's for the Articles, but he's trying to calm them down. So what we're going to be doing on Thursday when I see y'all is we are going to be looking at Jefferson's actions, and then we're going to look at the War of 1812. But one of the things that we will be doing, and I just want you to get a handle of this, this was an FRQ a couple of years ago on the AP exam. It says that Jefferson was therefore consistently inconsistent. It's easy to quote one Jefferson to refute the other. We're going to evaluate this statement and determine if he's consistent or inconsistent with his political beliefs. So this first one, I'm going to read it and y'all are going to tell me consistent or inconsistent, and then we're going to go back and look at beliefs. It says reduce the Army and Navy. One of Jefferson's first actions as president was to reduce the military establishment to a mere police force of 2,500 officers and men. Critics called it penny pinching. But Jefferson's reluctance to invest in soldiers and ships was less about money than about Republican ideals. Among his fondest hopes was for America that it might transcend the bloody war and entangling alliances of Europe. The United States would set an example for the world for forswearing military force and winning friends through peaceful coercion. Also, the Republicans distrusted large standing armies as a standing invitation to dictatorship. Okay, consistent or inconsistent? Consistent. What can we say is consistent from what we saw in his beliefs?
Small military.
He wants a small military. Is it small?
Yes.
How small is it? 2,500. Okay. What else in here is consistent with his beliefs? He doesn't want to seem like a king, right? He says standing armies are invitations to dictatorships. What else in here is consistent? He doesn't want alliances with Europe. I want to point out this. Penny pinching. What does it mean to be a penny pincher?
Frugal.
You're frugal. Is that consistent? Overall, he's being consistent, right? I want us to look at this next one. It says, keep the bus. I know that sounds really weird, but if I wrote the Bank of the United States, it would take up that whole thing. So I just abbreviated to the bus. Y'all get what the bus is? The Bank of the United States. And we'll be focusing more on the Bank of the United States this unit. It says, except for excising the excise tax, Jefferson left the Hamiltonian framework essentially intact. They did not tamper with the Federalist programs for funding the national debt at par and assuming Revolutionary War debts of the states. They did launch no attack on the Bank of the United States. They will recharter a bigger bank in the future. So I'm just focusing on this. Is this consistent with who Jefferson is, keeping the bank? No. Because how did Hamilton read the Constitution to keep the bank? Was it loose or strict?
Loose.
And Jefferson believed in what type of interpretation? And the Bank of the United States, it is loose, but what clause did they use? Elastic. Did Jefferson believe in the elastic clause? So is this consistent or inconsistent? Okay, I want you to beg to differ. The Bank of the United States, it pays off the U.S. debt. Is it consistent now? Okay, so Jefferson, although he keeps the bank to be able to pay off his debt, it goes against his beliefs in what? The interpretation of the Constitution. So do y'all see we're going to do this although, however, okay, with Jefferson. And we're going to have a little T-chart that we're going to be adding in stuff. Do y'all get what's going on? Okay, so next time we'll come to the first two. Do y'all got a hankering on his beliefs? Okay.